When first installing Proxmox, you are provided with an untrusted HTTPS certificate on the Proxmox web panel. We're going to use LetsEncrypt to obtain a trusted HTTPS certificate using Cloudflare DNS to prove to LetsEncrypt that we own the domain that we wish to visit. Using Google Domains, I have registered the domain thevirtualizationchannel.com. I have also signed up with a free DNS account from Cloudflare, and I have updated the DNS name servers for thevirtualizationchannel.com to use Cloudflare's DNS servers instead of Google's domains name servers. The first thing that we need to do in order to obtain our certificate is to specify the subdomain that we wish to use for our server. Right now, our Proxmox server is using an IP address instead of a domain name. We can resolve this by going to the Cloudflare DNS web panel and selecting the virtualizationchannel.com, the domain that we wish to use. Then select the DNS option from the Cloudflare menu, and we want to use the DNS management feature to add a record. The record that we wish to add will have the IP address of the Proxmox server, and we will use the subdomain PVE0-01 in order to access our web server. We're going to change the proxy status to DNS only and set our time to live to only 2 minutes. We can see the summary here of the DNS record we are going to create. PVE-01.thevirtualizationchannel.com will be used to access our Proxmox server at this IP address. Click Save, and that DNS record will be created using the Cloudflare DNS service. Now if we go up, we can access our Proxmox server using that URL instead. We're going to now click Advanced and accept this self-signed or untrusted certificate that Proxmox is presenting. We need to get into the web panel in order to change some of Proxmox's settings to obtain the LetsEncrypt certificate. On the Data Center panel, select Acme from the sub-menu. Acme will allow us to register with LetsEncrypt as well as verify with LetsEncrypt that we own the domain using the Cloudflare service. The first thing that we need to do is we need to create 2 accounts for LetsEncrypt. The first will be a staging account. So from Acme directory, select LetsEncrypt v2 staging. Staging is an area of LetsEncrypt that allows you to test your settings before going live. We're going to call this LetsEncrypt-staging. Accept the terms of service of LetsEncrypt, and then register. We will now create a second account, and we will call this one LetsEncrypt Live. And this one will just use LetsEncrypt v2 Acme directory, accept the terms of service, and register. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to provide the credentials that we are going to use with Cloudflare in order to prove to LetsEncrypt that we own the domain. When we select Add Challenge Plugins, we will be asked to provide a plugin ID, which we will call this Cloudflare, and the DNS API that we need to specify is CF. Cloudflare Managed DNS. So Cloudflare Managed DNS will ask us to provide either a global account key and an email, or an API token and the account ID. What we're going to do is we're going to create an API token which restricts the authorization of what Proxmox is able to change in the Cloudflare settings, and we will also provide Proxmox with our account ID. To obtain this information, go to the Cloudflare panel and go to the Overview panel for the domain. Near the bottom of this page on the right side, we will have the account ID listed. we can copy this account ID and put it in a useful place. The next thing that we need to do is we need to get an API token. Just beneath the account ID, we can select Get Your API Token, then select the API tokens from the top menu. We're going to create a new token for Proxmox, and we want to use the Edit Zone DNS template for this token. We're going to add the name, or change the name of this token to Proxmox, so that we know that this token was created for Proxmox. In addition to the Zone DNS Edit permission, we also need to provide the Zone Read permission. We can restrict this even further by selecting the zone resource thevirtualizationchannel.com so that this token can only access zone resources for this domain. Furthermore, we can specify what IP addresses will be allowed to update this or use this token. These settings are good for me, so I'm going to click Continue to Summary. I'm going to create the token, and now we have the token visible to us. I'm going to copy the contents of this token and save it in a safe place. Now we can go back to the Proxmox control panel, and we can enter in that token, and we can also enter in the account ID. Now we have satisfied the two items that we need for the Cloudflare DNS to work. Click Add, and you will now have the appropriate challenge plugin. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to select our server, not the data center, but our server from the Proxmox server menu. We then need to click on the certificates from the sub-menu. Now, under the certificates section, we have an ACME zone here, an ACME area. We need to add a new domain, and the challenge type, instead of HTTP, we're going to use the challenge type of DNS. Now, we created a plugin just a minute ago, and we called it Cloudflare. And the domain that we need is the domain that we prepared, pve01.thevirtualizationchannel.com. Now when I hit create, we will now have a new entry here for ACME. But we are not quite done yet. We need to specify which account to use in order for ACME to request the certificate from LetsEncrypt. So we're going to hit the little pencil button to edit the account that we're going to use, and we're going to start by using the staging account. This will allow us to verify that we are successfully using the right settings. Hit the check mark, and then select the Order Certificates Now button. This will use ACME to talk to LetsEncrypt's staging server, validate that we have the domain. Proxmox will create records, just like we created that A record for this domain. Proxmox will create text records on Cloudflare and then validate them with LetsEncrypt. When LetsEncrypt sees those text records, LetsEncrypt will then know that we own the domain. We own the domain enough to have the authority to create those text records. As we can see, our domain has been validated. We have been validated as the owners for this domain, and now we are waiting for the LetsEncrypt server to provide us with a certificate, which it has, and now PVE Proxy, which is the Proxmox web server, has restarted, and it should have the new server, or the new certificate rather. Now we're still getting a certificate warning, and this is because we have used the staging server in order to test our settings. If we click Advanced, we can see that the error is that there is an unknown issuer for our certificate. If we view that certificate, we can see that the issuer of the certificate is LetsEncrypt's staging server. So that means that our settings were successful. So we're going to accept the risk and continue. And now we're going to go back to our servers page, our certificates page, and then we're going to change the account from the staging server for LetsEncrypt to the live server. Once we've done this, we're going to order our new live certificates. We'll give it another 30 seconds, and then we will have the valid live certificates. We should see it validate here in just a few more moments. There we go. The domain has been validated, and now we are ordering our certificate. And now the Proxmox web server is restarting again, and when it reloads, we should have our valid certificate. There we are. As we can see in the upper left corner now, we have a valid certificate. The connection is secure because the certificate has been validated by Firefox Certificate Store. And if we see, it is verified by LetsEncrypt.